Welcome to another Wealthy Boomer interview. Today our guest is Gordon Pape, the author of Tax-Free Savings Accounts, A Guide to TFSAs, and How They Can Make You Rich. Welcome, Gordon.
Thank you, John.
Now, Gordon, this was a crash. Penguin really hammered this manuscript out. How did that happen?
Well, actually, it happened. I'd had the idea of doing a book like this, but I've been kind of reluctant because you may recall in Sleep Easy Investing, I said that was the last investment book I was going to write. And then, of course, the finance minister surprised us in his February budget and introduced these accounts. And over the summer, I was kind of thinking, well, nobody knows about them. Perhaps we ought to have a book on the subject. But I really didn't want to write another book. And then I went and gave a seminar to a group in early September. And this was a group of people I was talking to about retirement planning. And I mentioned these tax-free savings accounts, TFSAs as we call them. Nobody knew anything about them. And at that point in time, it said to me, I think I better write this book. So I contacted Penguin. I said, are you interested? But it's got to be done really fast because it has to be out in January when these things come into force. And they said, well, we normally don't move at that speed, but for this we'll do it. So I literally wrote this book in 40 days.
It's amazing that a big publishing group like Penguin can move that fast. I guess that it indicates the potential. They're going to make them rich, but your whole premise is they're going to make the individual Canadian saver rich. You have an example in there where if somebody invests very aggressively against 15% return, they can make something like $5 or $6 million. Can you go through that example?
Well, one of the things we looked at, I look at several examples in the book of people in various financial situations who can contribute various amounts of money. And in this case, as I recall, I was looking at a fellow who's 32 years old, and he's very savvy. We assume he's quite knowledgeable as an investor, and we're just coming out of a bear market, and he invests very aggressively, as you say, and he is able to average 15% a year. Now, most people can't do that, so we have to be realistic here.
Most people are minus 15% right now.
That's right. But assuming that you could do that you're really skillful at it, by the time that he was 50 years old, he would have accumulated $1 million between him and his wife in their joint TFSAs together. And that's all tax-free. And of course, that's the key to this whole thing, is that all the money you make in these plans is tax-free forever. It's not like RSPs. It doesn't get taxed when it comes out. When you take it out, it's yours. It's not income. It's nothing. It's all your money. So that was the case of the fellow that had the 15%. And then if he just went on and kept doing it, he'd have about $6 million in the plan by the time he was 65 years old.
But there was another example of a more realistic example, perhaps of a more ordinary couple, and even they get to $1 million.
That's right, yes. I looked at a couple, and get a hypothetical couple in Winnipeg, and I said, okay, you got a couple of 22-year-olds, and they're not married yet. They live in common law. They're going to get married in a couple of years, and she's working as a library assistant, and he's working as a bus driver trainee. So they aren't making a lot of money, and they can't afford to invest very much. But they start small, and they agree, okay, we're going to put in $1,000 a year into our plans, and then every 5 years we're going to increase it by $500. So it's quite modest, the amount they're contributing. And yet even at, and we assume they put the money into a balanced fund, and they make on average over the years 7%, which doesn't seem to be out of line. Today we might not say that's feasible, but it certainly is historically. And even they, by the time they are 65, between their two plans, they have accumulated $1 million, more than $1 million.
It's amazing. Because I know in one of your earlier books, you talked about the RSP as $1 million vehicle.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And the difference being, of course, that with the RSP, you get taxed when you take the money out of the plan, whereas with the TFSA, you don't. And that is so critical to the whole equation.
So I know in your book, you talk about various sort of trade-offs, TFSA versus RESP, TFSA versus the RSP. Let's talk about that one.
Okay, because that's something a lot of people are going to be looking at. We're coming up to RSP season, and they're going to be saying, well, do I use these new tax-free savings accounts, or do I put money in my RSPs? Of course, the ideal answer is you do both, because the RSP is going to generate a tax deduction. So then you put the money in the RSP, you take the tax refund, you put that in the TFSA, and you've got it both ways. But if you have a choice between the two, then the general rule that you apply is you look down the road and say, what are my savings likely to be in retirement when I get there? One of the reasons these plans were promoted so aggressively by the C.D. Howe Institute, who were really the people who were pushing this thing, was that they said that the RSP is not good for lower income people. That because of the way it's set up, it doesn't really work in their favor, and the withdrawals, because they're considered income, are going to compromise their ability to get guaranteed income supplement and tax credits and all that kind of thing. If you're in the modest income group, these are much better plans for you than RSPs. The RSPs are better suited for people in the middle to upper income ranges.
Okay, next time we're going to talk about the mechanics, the nitty-gritty of how to set one of these up. Thank you very much, Gordon Pape, author of Tax-Free Savings Accounts, the fastest book in the West.